Hello, 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 and welcome to another episode of Let's Talk with Carl E. Long. It's your boy Carl E. Long coming to you from the 214 in the Big D, Dallas, Texas. And God has been a hell week. All you people that have been in frats and sororities, y'all know what hell week means. Well, it has been a hell week in America. Hell week. And I mean that with double capital HE, double hockey sticks. Yes, guys. So, it is so hard to stay away from the TV because I'm just afraid that if I turn my head away, the country might be just gone. Yeah, that's how serious it's been. It has been. And, I know most of the people aren't tuning in. I know a lot of people don't know half the things that are going on. You'd be surprised how many people don't listen to anything except local news and maybe just a little bit of the weather and things like that, but they're just tuned out. And I don't mean just because it's election season. I think that there are a lot of people that just are tuned out, period, and are going about their happy little lives, on their phones and just not understanding that we have a crazy man in the White House, guys, and he is ruining this country. Yes, it is. And you'd be surprised at what's going on. I mean, I can't even believe it sometimes. I was like, is this really happening? Are we being punked? Is this really happening in my lifetime? Yes, it is. So, make America great again. That wonderful phrase that has been sealed in our minds for the rest of eternity. There's merch out there. You'll find a red hat somewhere that'll probably be worth some money for many years to come. But that make America great again, that statement itself is just something that just separates. Make America great again. Again refers to something backwards. And that's where we're going. Back. They want to go back to when America was great again. When was that? I know a lot of black people say that. When was America great? This is a great country. Let's just get this out how we need to get it out. This is a great and wonderful country, and we love to live in it. But it has been progressing. It has not always been great. We've done some crazy stuff in this country, but in spite of it all, it is a great country. And we have a lot of dirty laundry. And as much as you want to sweep it under the table, you can't. You can't. You see, because America was a dream place. People came here from Ireland to Scotland, from England, from everywhere they came to because they wanted to come to a better place. They didn't like what was going on where they were. So they came to America, the American dream. And somehow our Republican friends have forgotten about that. They have forgotten about that. Yes, they have. So we are definitely going backwards. I mean, when I'm listening to RFK talking about getting rid of vaccines, and cutting programs for the Center for Disease Control and COVID programs and HIV programs, just cutting them. Like, are we supposed to be all well too? We don't need any of those. What is the reason for that? Why would you put America back in harm's way, RFK Jr.? Is this some kind of holistic medicine you think that's going to make everybody safe? Well, it's not working because we have a measles outbreak. Yes, we do. So that's what's happening over with Robert F. Kennedy. And then you have the whole Harvard situation. All right. For some reason, the right, as I'm going to call them, the conservative right, have decided that the elitist leftists, as they call us, leftards, everything else I've heard, that we are so elite that we don't allow them anything. And I'm so sorry that we're just as smart as you. What is this? Kindergarten? So they're going after all these Ivy League schools and telling them what they have to do. But they're hiding behind the guise of anti-Semitism because there's been some student protests who are protesting. And you know what? And none of these kids, I don't think, are anti-Semitic. What they are is anti-Netanyahu. Because even though he leads the nation of Israel, he's not doing stuff right. And we all know it. But if you say something about it, you're an anti-Semite. If you want a real anti-Semite, then look at Mel Gibson. That's a real one. He's not afraid of saying it either. So they're going out to these universities, and they even wrote Harvard this very long letter of, this is what you got to do. You got to do this. You got to have more programs like this. You got to get rid of it. But you know what? One of the things they said, and you need to recruit more conservative people. That sounds like DEI to me. They want them to get more conservatives in Harvard. So Harvard's pushing back because this is just craziness. Who comes up with this crap? And why are they so hell-bent on all of these students giving their First Amendment right and they're protesting? That's why we are a people now. Black people, if it wasn't for protesting, we would not even be here. So I have to ask the question. You're also concerned about the anti-Semitic protesting that is going on these campuses. But you weren't that way when the white nationalist groups all showed up in Charlottesville at the college campus. Do you know what I mean? And they were all over the little black protesters and things of that nature. Where are you then? Where are you? See, because you got to understand, this is a farce. This whole administration is a farce. It is a love fest for Donald Trump. And that's all it is. Everything he's doing is all about him. Now, I know that some of you people are probably never going to believe that, because I know you're forever MAGA, but Donald Trump doesn't care about y'all. All he cares about is getting revenge for getting to be a 34 count, 2-time impeached president. He's on a revenge tour. But I can understand why all these people are so brainwashed. Just take a day and watch Fox News. You will not get any truth on that channel. Every now and then when they have mainstream news, real journalists, they'll give the truth. But in most cases, they're being bathed with this stuff. And they think it's the truth. And it's not. Wow. So that is what's going on in America. And you know what I like to do? Every time I like to look back and look at the Trump agenda and see if we're on track with what he said he was going to do. So I pull up my old handy dandy Project 2025 list, and let's see if he's on course. This is the one that he disavowed. Remember that? We couldn't talk about it because he disavowed it. He said, I don't know anything about it. Yeah. Liar. But yeah, y'all trust a good liar. All right, so the first thing it says was to seize power within the federal government. Done that. Check. Implement a national backdoor ban on abortion without Congress and jail health care providers. Check. He did sneak in a little something on the women that they knew nothing about. Okay. Pack the Supreme Court with MAGA extremists. Ain't done that yet. We'll probably get there. End climate protections and gut clean energy program. Check. Yes. Pardon violent January 6th criminal insurrectionists. Done that. Abolish the Department of Education. On its way to doing that. So cut taxes for the ultra wealthy. Trying to get that done. Eliminate union and worker protections. Coming there. Messing with it a little bit. Withdraw from the Paris Climate Agreement. Done that. So I'm like, oh God. What have we done? What have we done? So I want everybody to know, if you don't know it already, your vote counts. Your vote counts. All you that thought you didn't want to ever vote because you didn't think your vote counts all the way down to the minutia county. It counts. So, something that happened in this election, there's always more independents than Republicans or Democrats. They always are there more because a lot of people that are in the center. But I think for the first time in a long time, more Republicans came out to vote than Democrats. I still don't believe that figure. I think that's a trumped up figure from how they mess with the whole numbers and everything like that. But there are more of us than there are them, but we didn't come out. So now we're having to deal with this. Yeah. This is what we're having to deal with, guys. So this has been a week. Yeah. So you know what? I want to start out today, and the name of the topic, I haven't even gave y'all the topic of my episode today. The topic for today's episode is crisis. Are we now in a constitutional crisis in America? Are we? I think that we might be. So here's the Trump formula, guys. The Trump formula is deny, 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 deny. Sue, 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 appeal, appeal, appeal. He likes to tie everybody up in court or into a whole bunch of minutia and red tape until everybody just can't do anything. And it's working. It's worked for him his whole life. Yeah, it has. It is. So all these people that are in his cabinet, I'm telling you that any normal president, none of these people would be on the radar to have any of these cabinet positions. Trust me. None. All the ones that were conservatives that followed Trump, they had a sense enough to realize, well, this man is out of his mind. And they're gone. So now what's around him? A bunch of kissing the feet Trump loyalists who will never tell him anything that he's done is wrong or out of order. They're afraid to. They're kissing his damn feet, every single one of them. If you don't, he's going to get rid of you. They've been quietly getting rid of people in the Department of Defense. Yeah. Trust me, they're getting rid of people. If they think there's leaks coming out to the press, you're gone. So this whole thing with Garcia being shipped to El Salvador and not given any due process. Now they dug up some dirt on him. He had an altercation with his wife, so now he's a wife beater and he needs to be deported. The whole idea of this thing is like they made a mistake. They don't want to admit it, and they don't want Trump to end up with egg on his face. So they're making a national incident out of this thing. And when all they had to do was send the guy back, like the courts told you to. But you didn't. And this is the crisis right here. The courts told you to turn that plane around and bring them back. You didn't do it. The Supreme Court told you to facilitate, and that's the word, that's the little buzzword that's going to get litigated. And they said to bring him back. You still haven't did it. And now you're telling lies like the El Salvador, he won't send him back. He's not a hostage. And Trump, you know you can get him back. And then everybody keeps saying, and I agree, this is not just about Garcia. It's also about, what if you are a Puerto Rican citizen, you look very Latin, but you just happen to have on one of those tattoos, and you get swept up off the street and sent to an El Salvadorian prison. And then you get over there and they made a mistake. Said, oh, well, we can't do anything. He belongs to El Salvador now. That's what's happening. Bull crap. And this is all because of this, because nobody wants to tell Trump he made a mistake.
Wow. So let's just listen to a little bit about the El Salvador conversation in the White House. Let's just listen to this and tell me what you think. Here we go.
From this very low-rated anchor at CB.
Thank you, President. Do you plan to ask President Bukele to help return the man who your administration says was mistakenly deported? The man who was mistakenly deported to El Salvador?
Well, let me ask Pam, would you answer that question?
Sure, President. First and foremost, he was illegally in our country. He had been illegally in our country. And in 2019, two courts, an immigration court and an appellate immigration court, ruled that he was a member of MS-13 and he was illegally in our country. Right now, it was additional paperwork had needed to be done. That's up to El Salvador if they want to return him. That's not up to us. The Supreme Court ruled, President, that if, as El Salvador wants to return him, this is international matters, foreign affairs, if they wanted to return him, we would facilitate it, meaning provide a plane.
So will you return him?
And you are doing a great job.
Thank you.
Stephen Miller, wait a minute. Can you just also respond to that question? Because, it's asked by CNN, and they always ask it with a slant, because they're totally slanted because they don't know what's happening. That's why nobody's watching them. But would you answer that question also, please?
Yes, gladly. So, as Pam mentioned, there's an illegal alien from El Salvador. So, with respect to you, he's a citizen of El Salvador. So, it's very arrogant even for American media to suggest that we would even tell El Salvador how to handle their own citizens.
I just want to stop that. That's Stephen Miller. He's the White House Deputy Chief of Staff and a security advisor. He's always stepping in like he knows something. He's not a lawyer. This is the biggest loyalist that you have, is this stooge right here. I'm like, who asked you anything? And guys, this is just the way they sit around in the Oval Office is just ridiculous. It's stupid. It's like, hey, here's all the white people running the country now. We're all sitting here making decisions for everybody. And Trump with his gold splattered everywhere, looking like a brothel. The White House. I'm sick. Let's finish this.
The starting point. As two immigration courts found that he was a member of MS-13. When President Trump declared MS-13 to be a foreign terrorist organization, that meant that he was no longer eligible under federal law, which I'm sure you know, you're very familiar with the INA, that he was no longer eligible for any form of immigration relief in the United States. So he had a deportation order that was valid, which meant that under our law, he's not even allowed to be present in the United States and had to be returned because of the foreign terrorist designation. This issue was then, by a district court judge, completely inverted, and a district court judge tried to tell the administration that they had to kidnap a citizen of El Salvador and fly him back here. That issue was raised to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said the district court order was unlawful, and its main components were reversed 9-0 unanimously, stating clearly that neither Secretary of State nor the President could be compelled by anybody to forcibly retrieve a citizen of El Salvador from El Salvador, who again is a member of MS-13, which, as I'm sure you understand, rapes little girls, murders women, murders children, is engaged in the most barbaric activities in the world, and I can promise you, if he was your neighbor, you would move right away.
So you don't plan
But
to
the
ask for
Supreme
any
Court
help
is
to get
asking
him back?
to.
And
that-
what was the ruling
Is that-
in the Supreme Court, Steve? Was it 9-0?
Yes, it was a 9-0
In our favor.
in our favor against the district court ruling, saying that no district court has the power to compel the foreign policy function of the United States. As Pam said, the ruling solely stated that if this individual, at El Salvador's sole discretion, was sent back to our country, that we could deport him a second time.
Well,
No version of this legally ends up with him ever living here because he is a citizen of El Salvador. That is the president of El Salvador. Your questions about it, per the court, can only be directed to him.
I asked
¿Usted lo
President
liberaría,
Bukele,
Presidente
what is
Bukele?
can President Bukele weigh in on this? Do you plan to return him?
Well, I'm suppose you're not suggesting that I smuggle a terrorist into the United States, right?
It's always
how can I smuggle? How can I return him to the United States? Like I smuggle him into the United States, or what do I do? Of course, I'm not going to do it. It's like, the question is preposterous. How can I smuggle a terrorist into the United States? I don't have the power to return him to the United States.
A terrorist? This is ridiculous, guys. This is ridiculous. They're just playing with a man's life. This is ridiculous. I am so disgusted with this whole way they're doing this. Here we go.
So you could release him inside El Salvador. Yeah, but I'm not releasing. I mean, we're not very fond of releasing terrorists into our country. I mean, we just turned the murder capital of the world into the safest country of the Western Hemisphere, and you want us to go back into the releasing criminals so we can go back to being the murder capital of the world? No, that's not going to happen.
Well, they'd love to have a criminal, released into our
I mean, there's a fascination.
They would love it.
Yeah.
They're sick. These are sick people. Marco, do you have something to say about
Yeah, I mean, Stephen outlined it. I don't understand what the confusion is. This individual is a citizen of El Salvador. He was illegally in the United States and was returned to his country. That's where you deport people, back to their country of origin. Except for Venezuela, that wasn't refusing to take people back, or places like that. I can tell you this, Mr. President. No, the foreign policy of the United States is conducted by the President of the United States, not by a court. And no court in the United States has a right to conduct the foreign policy of the United States. It's that simple.
Okay, that was Marco Rubio, guys. He's probably the only person that we thought had some sane mind and making decisions, but he's been possessed. I mean, he is an immigrant himself. His grandfather was deported. I just cannot believe this is happening. And guys, we have got to pay attention to what's happening. You've got to pay attention. This could happen to a regular citizen. They're just grabbing up people with no due process and putting them into camps and sending them to prison, whatever. And this is not good.
End of story.
And that's what the Supreme Court held, by the way, to Marco's point. The Supreme Court said exactly what Marco said, that no court has the authority to compel the foreign policy function of the United States. We won a case 9-0, and people like CNN are portraying it as a loss, as usual, because they want foreign terrorists in the country who kidnap women and children. But President Trump, his policy is foreign terrorists that are here illegally get expelled from the country, which, by the way, is a 90-10 issue.
Well, Mr. President, you said that if the Supreme Court said someone needed to be returned, that you would abide by that. You said that on Air Force One just a few days ago. And they said that it must be facilitated.
Why don't you just say, isn't it wonderful that we're keeping criminals out of our country? Why can't you just say that? Why do you go over and over? And that's why nobody watches you anymore.
You know what? Poor Caitlin Collins from CNN. He just bashes her like crazy, but she still keeps answering the question. She still keeps answering the question no matter what. Poor CNN. You don't have any ratings. And guys, I don't know about that whole situation right there, because as long as these people are in office, it is just so dangerous. It is so dangerous that they're in office. And let's see more on this subject. Here we go.
Now to the legal battle over how the Trump administration is deporting undocumented immigrants. A judge is threatening to start a contempt investigation, and a U.S. senator is demanding an alleged gang member be returned to Maryland. ABC's Nicole D'Antonio has new details. Nicole, good morning.
Well, Rhiannon, the Maryland senator who traveled to El Salvador is condemning the deportation of Kilmar Abrego Garcia as new details about his past come to light. Senator Chris Van Hollen is raising new concerns about Kilmar Abrego Garcia's deportation. The Maryland lawmaker traveling to El Salvador pushing for his release from a notorious prison.
The entire purpose has been to bring Abrego Garcia home.
Abrego Garcia was living in Maryland after entering the country illegally in 2011. His family says he was fleeing gang persecution. He was deported last month with hundreds of other men accused of being gang members. The Trump administration admits it mistakenly deported him due to a clerical error, but says he's not coming back, despite a Supreme Court order requiring the administration to facilitate his return.
I asked the folks at the embassy whether they'd been ordered by the administration to do anything to facilitate his return. The answer was no.
The White House argues the Supreme Court cannot interfere with President Trump's diplomatic authority in dealing with El Salvador.
It's appalling and sad that Senator Van Hollen and the Democrats applauding his trip to El Salvador today are incapable of having any shred of common sense.
A confidential informant named Abrego Garcia as a member of the MS-13 gang in 2019, but judges have questioned the evidence. Senator Van Hollen, after speaking to El Salvador's vice president, compared the deportation to an abduction.
Well, I asked him why he was keeping Kilmar in prison here, and his answer was that essentially the Trump administration is paying the government of El Salvador taxpayer money.
ABC News has learned new details about Abrego Garcia's past. In 2021, his wife obtained a temporary protective order against him, in which she said she was slapped, hit with an object, and detained against her will. The case was later closed, and his wife is now pleading for Abrego Garcia's return. Meanwhile, after weeks of protest, a federal judge is now threatening to hold the Trump administration in criminal contempt for violating his orders last month to turn around those 2 planes carrying deportees to El Salvador. Judge James Boasberg saying the administration displayed a willful disregard for his order, determining there was probable cause to find them in contempt. His investigation could eventually include officials testifying under oath or the appointment of an independent lawyer to prosecute the administration. Now, the White House is vowing to appeal, saying, quote, the president is 100% committed to ensuring that terrorist and criminal illegal migrants are no longer a threat to Americans.
All right, so that's the story right there. So he's defying everything that the judge is saying. Do y'all remember when, during his own trial, the judge put a gag order and Trump continued to defy him? And he put a contempt order on him? You see what I'm saying? He thinks he's above the law. And we are letting him do that. He's not above the law. And if the judge puts a contempt court on someone, they'll can send some sheriffs out to whoever. And I looked it up to see who can they go. They can't go after the president, of course. But they can go after Pam Bondi. They could go after one of those immigration czars, whoever started the plane. Somebody can go to jail. Yes, they can. And don't think that they can. Judges have sheriffs that report to them, and they are the law, and they can come and get you. And I hope it happens. I really do. So I am so angry with Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, because during her confirmation hearings, she's such a liar. She sat there and said that she would never do anything outside of a jurisdiction that did not, she would not be on Trump's watch and do anything he wants. That's exactly what she's doing. That is exactly what she's doing. She's now behind this. Let's listen to her on her thoughts on this case right here. Here she goes.
President Bukele said he was not sending him back. That's the end of the story. If he wanted to send him back, we would give him a plane ride back. But he's from El Salvador, he's in El Salvador, and that's where the president plans on keeping him.
The administration maintains that Abrego Garcia is a member of the MS-13 gang without providing the evidence to support that. He and his attorney are denying that. Are you certain he's not a member of the gang?
I am almost 100% certain that he is not.
What gives you that certainty?
Well, we've done our own check. We've talked to people that know him. And we have no indication that he's part of MS-13 at all. We've talked to the employer that he works for. They say he's an outstanding employee. They would love to have him back should he be returned back to the United States. I know the labor movement in general sees one of their fellow brothers in a notoriously heinous situation in that prison. And it has people upset, scared, and that's why I think it's gaining so much steam. Our union is founded on due process. We want our brother Kilmar to come back and get his due process, be reunited with his family, and let the
courts do it. The courts. You don't just grab people off the street and throw them in the jail. No Miranda rights, no going before a judge just because you think and know because you got paper. I don't care if you do have paperwork. Even a criminal, a murderer in pure sight has due process in America. Wow. So that's Pam Bondi now. And now she's definitely doing Donald Trump's agenda. Now, do y'all remember when Donald Trump had all the governors at the White House and they had a meeting, and this big thing about transgender, his executive order that he put in about transgender athletes? Well, the good mayor of, is it Maryland? No, it's Maine. She told Donald Trump that she'd see him in court because he told her she better take care of it or I'll just take away all your money and your whatever from you if you don't, any kind of support. And so she said, okay, I'll see you in court. Well, they're getting in court because dear Pam Bondi is doing it. Listen to this.
Transgender athletes be allowed to participate in girls' sports? Well, the Trump administration has said no.
The Department of Justice will not sit by when women are discriminated.
Today, Attorney General Pam Bondi sued the state of Maine, alleging that it is violating Title IX, a federal anti-discrimination law, by allowing transgender athletes to participate in girls' sports in that state.
We have repeatedly notified Maine of its infractions and urged them to remedy the situation to protect women.
Now, this follows a highly publicized clash between President Trump and the governor of that state, where she refused to implement President Trump's ban on transgender athletes and said, see you in court. Well, now that is a reality with this lawsuit. Now, the state of Maine has said there are only 2 transgender athletes participating in girls' sports.
2 athletes. So Pam Bondi, the Attorney General of the United States, has nothing else to do but to do all of Donald Trump's dirty work. That's what she's doing. Is there other stuff that needs to be done? Pam Bondi? You're spending all this energy on 2, and they're not women, they're girls. They're girls in school. All this energy. Because this is crazy. It's just crazy. All right, now here we go. Then over here in Democrat land, you got the new vice chair of the Democratic Party, David Hogg. You know, David Hogg, he came out one of the schools, I can't think of which school it was, in Florida, from the school shootings. He's been a spokesperson for a long time. Now he's the vice chair of the Democratic Party. All right, so his new strategy is, okay, all this stuff is going on with Trump. We're about to lose our freaking country. And he's over here getting ready to primary and get rid of ineffective Democrats. We don't have time for all that, David Hogg. You need to be working with the regime to take care of what's going on right now. We're not looking for all of that. Fracturing up the party. So he's going to go out and look for ineffective Democrat positions and primary them with younger people. We don't have time. Our country is in a constitutional crisis. And we don't have time. We don't need a bunch of inexperienced, new, young congressmen, progressives out here right now. It's not time for that. Your time will come at another time. So he's gotten pledged over $20 million. Let me read it. It says, David Hogg, elected as vice chair of the Democratic National Committee, DNC, has proposed several initiatives. So one of the key ones is challenging ineffective incumbents. So his organization, Leaders We Deserve, Hogg plans to invest $20 million to support primary challenges against Democratic incumbents he considers ineffective. He wants to engage the youth and get them into social media. Okay, stuff like that. That's fine. And wants to address courts. This is not the time for that, David Hogg. It's not the time for us to be fighting among ourselves. We can't even keep up with what Donald Trump is doing right now. When we're back in office, yes, let's do all of that. But this is not the time. If this causes us to lose seats, you're making things worse. All right, so let's listen to what he's talking to Simone Sanders, and you'll get a view of what he's wanting to do. Here we go with David Hogg.
There are great older people in our party that are leading the fight against Donald Trump and have been doing so for nearly a decade at this point, like Congresswoman Pelosi. We also have people, obviously, like Jan Schakowsky and so many others that are meeting this moment. But the reality is, we know that only 27% of our base is approving of where we are right now as a party. And we lost voting shares with every single demographic except predominantly older voters and highly educated voters. That is a huge problem. And what we're trying to do here is not just focus on primaries where there's potentially an older incumbent, but more than anything, an ineffective person in that position, and replace them with a generational leader to build the future of our party. We're also focusing on competitive races to support the Democrat in those races.
Competitive general election races.
Yes, but we're not going to challenge the Democratic incumbent in those races. We do not want to lose the House here, but we want to help make sure that we win back the House. I even had a friend, which is part of the reason why I'm doing this, who called me from college a few weeks ago that said, David, I am so mad that my member voted a certain way and they're a Democrat. I want to primary them. And I said, whoa, who is your member? And I looked it up, and it was a Democrat in a D+3 seat. And I said, I understand your frustration here, but what you need to understand as well is we may lose the House if you run here. So let me help figure out what you can run for, because there is a growing movement of that happening across our party. And I do not want that to happen. But we have to show our base how we are changing and how we are meeting in this moment to fight back, because we're losing our young people too. They're losing faith in democracy. And
they are definitely losing faith in democracy.
Is showing them how we are using democracy to rebuild and revive the American dream that they feel like is a farce.
Okay, after listening to him a little bit, as long as you are being cognizant of us losing seats, you got to be strategic with this. It's not time to be doing this stuff, pitting Democrats against Democrats. It's not the time. We're not Republicans. Our incumbents, they usually work well. And there might be a few out there that's been there a long time that's not doing anything. Like before Jasmine Crockett took over my district, 30 in Texas, our previous congresswoman, I didn't hear much from her. We didn't know what she did. I see her every now and then, but Jasmine is moving a storm. I'm not used to that in my district 30. So she retired on her own, and she's gone on to glory, bless her soul. But but I understand what he's trying to say, but this is just not the time for me. Just not the time. Jeez, there's a lot going on, guys, a lot. And so I want to keep y'all abreast of what people are saying too. So here is a woman who was talking about the protest movement, and I think what she said was quite engaging. Listen to what she said here. Let's talk about it. Here we go.
People keep saying the hands-off protests were so peaceful, like that's some kind of surprise. But if you're white like me, you need to think about what actually made that possible. White people, you really need to sit with this. The protests were peaceful because we were the ones in the streets. Black, brown, and indigenous folks stayed home, not because they don't care, but for two reasons. One, it's not safe for them to show up. Two, it's not their problem to fix. We've all seen what happens when marginalized people show up in big numbers. Suddenly, it's tear gas, rubber bullets, arrest, and just straight up violence. So yeah, the protests were peaceful, but it wasn't because the system listened better. It's because whiteness made it safe for us to show up. And while we're naming things, let's be real. White people put 45 in office, not black voters, not brown voters, not indigenous voters, us. We built this system. We keep it running, and too many white folks are still clinging to it out of comfort, denial, or fear of giving up power. So if you're white and feeling proud that the protests were peaceful, cool. But ask yourself, what are you doing with that safety your skin gives you? Are you showing up when it matters most, or just when it's comfortable? Because this fight, this is our fight, not just in solidarity, but in accountability. 45 is a white problem. The system is a white problem, and it's on us to dismantle it. People
Did y'all
keep
hear
saying
that? Did y'all hear that? Did y'all hear that? I am so proud of my white sisters and brothers coming out and speaking out. That's what we need you to do. They're not going to listen to us. That's what we need you to do. When it comes from you, they will listen. And she's right. It wasn't us that put him in office. It was definitely the white people that put him in office. She said, we put him in office. I'm loving this. So, when I came across her little TikTok there, I was like, all right, my sister, that was really, really good. Really good. So I found another one. Here's my brother. Listen to what he has to say on the issue as well. Here we go.
So this is a tell by a MAGA. It lets you know about their racism, their bigotry. President Obama took over the greatest collapse in modern U.S. history. Well-spoken, great family man, great businessman. Took over the greatest collapse in modern U.S. history. It was left by GW 9/15/08. Divided our country because he did a great job. And he was black, proving all the people who were racist and bigot wrong. Proved him wrong. President Obama's greatest mistake was saving America. President Obama's greatest mistake was doing his job. President Obama's greatest mistake was not being an adulterer, not being found 100% liable for violent sexual assault, not being convicted of 34 felonies, not paying off an adult film star with campaign money. That was his greatest mistake. He was none of those. He took over the greatest collapse in modern U.S. history left by the Republicans and restored our economy, handing Trump a thriving economy. The thing that really, really pissed the racists off wasn't just that he was black. It was that he was great. He was a great president, wise beyond his years. You just told on yourself. Not once did he mention blue states or red states like Trump does. Not once did he only represent blue states or just red states like the divider and chief, the ignoramus, the dumb fuck, tariffs on, tariffs off is doing right now.
Let me just tell you why he's responding to. He's responding to a comment that says Obama was trash. He started the division. The thing is, Jack, there is nothing you're going to do about half the electorate that just don't like the left and never will. Just fact. He's talking to Ajax, the name of the guy on TikTok. I think that's his thing. Jack 061618. And so he's responding to that. The guy saying that Obama was trash and he's the one that started the division. You know what? They always say that. They're saying that we're the racists. We started the division. How are we starting the division? Y'all are dividing us. What are we doing? I get that all the time on my comments whenever I talk about black-white issues. You're just dividing the people. No, you did that. You created separate but equal. We didn't do that. You did. How are we doing that? Let him finish out.
You are too ignorant to know you're ignorant because of your hate. You have so much hate in your heart. It is really sad, Matt. I hope someday you're able to get some mental help to unravel this brainwashing and this hate you have. President Obama divided this country. No, what he did was he exposed the racists. A black man was our president. And you felt like just that alone, because of the color of his skin, divided our country, ignoring how great he was as our commander-in-chief. And he was great.
Guys, y'all don't know how many people really, I didn't realize how bad it was. Because, we were all in our Obama-ness. We were all just so excited to have a black president, and he was cool, and he had a cool family, had a cool wife, he was sharp, we were just excited. And he was a gracious, loving guy that treated everybody so cool. And I don't care if you were red on the right or the left, if you saw him, you wanted to be around him. And they hated that. They hated that he was that smart and that good, so they had to come up with stuff. So he divided the country. Yeah. Barack Obama divided the country. So Donald Trump was a gift. And we know that. He was a gift. Because all of you that had your arms down, you let a black man come into your lives, and you can't believe you did that. So you had to give us Donald damn Trump as a punishment, which is what it was. So let's just go into some more of the craziness here. So this is what's happening with ICE now. Here's an undocumented worker who was an immigrant who was going to the meetings. He had meetings, and they're going to actually some of these centers where they're going to get their reporting and find out about their law, like their court dates and all sorts of things. And they're coming in like they're supposed to come in every week as long as they're undocumented. And they're here on the asylum. They have to like report. And they were doing everything they're supposed to do so that they could get, to a point where they could get a green card or whatever. And ICE is showing up in these places. So here's a guy who's trying to do that, go and report like he normally does. And he's surrounded by these ICE guys. And then they just kind of bash his car up. Here we go. Let's listen to this.
An undocumented Guatemalan man was arrested by federal agents after they smashed his car window. Cell phone video shows Juan Francisco Menendez and his wife surrounded by federal agents after being pulled over in New Bedford, Massachusetts. Francisco Menendez called his lawyer for help, and she told the couple to hand the agents her business card and tell them she was on her way. A federal agent is heard telling the couple in Spanish that they can either do it the, quote, easy way or the hard way before threatening to smash the car window. Minutes later, video shows an agent smash Francisco Menendez's car window with a hammer. Francisco Menendez's lawyer says he qualifies for derivative asylum and has no criminal record. His wife says he's now being held at an ICE detention center in Dover, New Hampshire. CNN reached out to ICE for more information but has not heard back.
Y'all, did y'all see that? They basically just bashed the poor man's car in, snatched him out, and took him and his wife out. And they took him. And these guys, have y'all seen the guy who is actually the immigration czar? He's like a big old giant mean sucker. And he's got them out here like they are bounty hunters. And you should see the crew that he has. They're very scary looking. And they're grabbing up people. Like they grabbed up this Turkish student. So an immigration judge denied bond for a Tufts University student from Turkey who has been detained by authorities in Louisiana. So they grabbed her up and took her to Louisiana for 3 weeks over what her lawyers say is apparent retaliation for an op-ed piece she wrote in a student newspaper. Meanwhile, Ramesa Ozturk's lawyers filed a new request with a federal judge in Vermont considering whether to take jurisdiction of her detention case. The lawyers asked the judge to order her to be brought to the state by Friday and hold a hearing next week. They said it would be better communication with her legal team and a doctor to evaluate her. They said Ozturk has suffered 5 asthma attacks in detention. Lawyers for Ozturk, who's 30, had asked an immigration judge that she be released on bond as her immigration case proceeds. The judge denied her request Wednesday. The same day, Ozturk had a hearing, they said in statement released Thursday morning. So they grabbed this woman off the street. She's here on a visa. And because she wrote an op-ed in the New York Times, or wherever she put the op-ed, whatever newspaper it was in the Tufts University. She wrote an op-ed, and wherever she put it, so it was anti-Palestinian. It was she's a Palestinian, and what was going on there? She wrote an op-ed. That's all it is. Opinion editorial op-ed, and they grabbed her, sent her off to Louisiana. Yep. So the reason I say that, I mean, some of us, we all come from different countries. Some of you were born here, but you look like you come from another country. You could easily get snatched. You might be Indian, American, or something like that. You may look like a Palestinian. They might just snatch you. And you were born here. This is how scary this is. Wow. So, another thing that's really been bothering me too, guys, is how one of the CNN reps, she's been really good reporters to go into the red states and talking to the deep red people to find out what's going on. There is a little dissension there, believe it or not, but I find it strange that when Joe Biden was in office, the economy was horrible. Nobody can make ends meet. And now that Donald Trump is here and tariffs are going up and everything's going to be all out of kilter, that they still said, well, let's just let him do some work and let's let the president do his thing. It'll be a little bit of short-term pain. But it wasn't that way for when Joe Biden was there. There was no grace. None. That goes with the power of Donald Trump. Again, how does he do it? I don't know. Now, y'all just imagine that everything that's happening now is happening now. But instead of that, let's put Joe Biden as the one that's doing it. Can you see it? No, you can't, because it wouldn't happen. Conservatives would be all over that. They would. They would. So let's listen to this farmer and how he's like still in Trump's rah-rah corner. No matter what. Here we go.
Hey guys, it's Will, and I'm here at the mushroom house at the farm.
Wait a minute, this isn't the right guy. This isn't the right guy. So let's see. Is this the right one? This might be it. Let's just listen to him. I think he's a positive guy, though, but let's listen to him.
Hey guys, it's Will, and I'm here at the mushroom house at the farm. And I got to be honest with you right up front. There's no way to make this video without it sounding like an I told you so video. And I apologize for that ahead of time, but the truth is it's got to be told. Many of you remember before the election, I did several videos where I tried to speak to rural America, particularly farmers and ranchers, to talk to them about the ramifications of a second term for Donald Trump. And in several of those videos, I talked about the fact that if we were to elect Donald Trump and he were to impose a second round of tariffs on China, the results would be devastating. And if you think hard about it, you'll remember what we talked about. Number one, we talked about the fact that China wasn't prepared for the tariffs in the first Trump administration. They had a disease going through their hog population. They didn't have good stocks of row crops, so they were caught off guard. And they had to continue to buy some American pork and some American row crop products in order to survive the tariffs, especially the time of C-19. But we also talked about what's happened since then. The Chinese no longer have a disease going through their pork population and they're well stocked in pork. And in addition to that, they've reached out to South America and made best friends with the governments of Brazil and Argentina. And they are importing a lot of wheat and corn and soybeans from South America to the point where Brazil, which used to supply China with only 13% of their row crops, is now supplying them with over 43% of their row crops. And that relationship is just getting cozier and cozier. And we talked about the fact that if we were to impose another round of tariffs on China, it would be devastating for row crop farmers because since China is more prepared, not only would they be less likely to continue to buy row crops from Americans and from American farmers, they would also impose reciprocal tariffs of their own that would be devastating for row crop farmers in America. And guys, that's exactly what's happened. That's exactly what's happened. And again, this isn't an I told you so video, but it sure as hell is I wish you would listen video. Because on Friday, the Chinese told the 3 largest soybean distributors in this country that sell the beans that farmers raise in this country to China, you can no longer do business here. Your contracts are canceled, your licenses are canceled. In addition to that, they placed their own reverse tariffs on all different kinds of categories: pork, beef, corn, fowl, poultry. And remember what we said, those studies that have been done by the American Soybean Association, by the corn growers before the last election, that if these tariffs took place again, it would cost soybean farmers 37 billion metric tons of soybean sales to China and around the world. And with corn, it could cost as much as 80% of the corn sales in this country. And here we go. Top 3 soybean sales companies in this country, their licenses to sell to China have been canceled. Chinese are saying, we don't want your beans anymore. And now we face the same thing, the same threat that we warned would happen before the last election, happening now to corn as well. And we're talking billions of dollars worth of corn sales. There's no way a paltry $526 million ethanol fuel program sponsored by the Trump administration in Iowa, is going to make up for the billions of dollars in lost corn sales we are going to have because of these tariffs. And look at what happened today. I got up this morning, and while I was drinking my coffee up here at the farm, I listened to TikTok after TikTok of Trump supporters saying, well, he proved it today. The market's up 700 points. We're getting back all these gains. All these countries are coming to the table. And then what did we learn? When they asked the White House, you're claiming China wants to make a deal. Have you talked to China? No, we haven't. Have they said what kind of a deal they want? No, they haven't. Well, you're claiming South Korea wants a deal. Have you talked to them? Yes, we have. Have they talked about what kind of a deal they want? No, they haven't. And the truth of the matter is the market saw bullshit. And then what did the White House do? This afternoon, they announced that they're going to impose 104% tariffs on China, and the market lost every single one of the gains that it gained earlier today because there's chaos in the marketplace. People do not know how to plan for this, and this administration is woefully unprepared to do battle with the Chinese. I'm just telling you guys, this administration, when it comes to agriculture and rural policy, they're not playing chess, they're not playing checkers. They're sitting in the corner playing with themselves. There's no other way to put it, because everything they're doing from a policy perspective and an action perspective is failing. And now the chickens are coming home to roost. Why am I making this video? It's not to say I told you so, it's to say get off your butts. Republicans and independents and Democrats, all three of you. But I know the Democrats are doing the hard work. Get off your butts and make those calls to those Republican policy holders, those Republican office holders, those Republican politicians, and tell them to take back their power on these tariffs so that they can stop what's happening. There's no positive trend going on here, guys. I'm telling you right now, read the markets. Go out there and read the data from these conservative agricultural organizations that have no love for Democratic politicians that are telling us that shit is going south in a hurry. Farmers have already taken out their loans. They've already put a lot of their crops in the ground. If there are no sales and there are no subsidies, it will be too late for small farmers and ranchers. So get up, Republicans. You Republican farmers, get up and make those calls. Don't allow your cattlemen organizations to speak for you. Don't allow the Farm Bureau to speak for you. You make the calls yourselves to these politicians that you voted for and tell them you expect them to take their power over these tariffs back and to stop this freight train before it goes off the cliff. Because left to their own devices, this administration is not going to stop it. That's your call to action. Will you heed it? I don't know, but I hope so. Because if you don't, J.D. Vance and all of his friends at Acre Trader are going to make a hell of a lot of money come the end of this year when the harvest comes in and there's no place to sell it.
All right, so that was the good guy that was trying to warn all the farmers of what they need to do. And that video's gotten old. So what are we at now? 145% tariff from China? Something like that? Still going, guys. It's still going. So, you know, a lot of the constituents or the senators and congresswomen and congressmen have been going back home to their town halls. And Democrats are coming back to some steamy ones as well. But this is a Republican, Chuck Grassley, at a town hall that got kind of unruly. Let's listen in.
GOP Senator Chuck Grassley faced questions from constituents at a town hall in Fort Madison, Iowa, over the Trump administration mistakenly deporting a Maryland man to a notorious Salvadorian mega prison.
Are you going to bring that guy back from El Salvador? Yeah. Why not?
Well, because that's not a power of Congress.
The Supreme Court said to bring him back.
Judges are, and the president is upholding the Constitution. He's defined the Constitution. You're on the Judiciary Committee.
Trump don't care.
Guatemala is mine too. El Salvador is an independent country. The president
Speak up, please. We can't hear you.
The president of that country is not subject to our U.S. Supreme Court.
I'm pissed.
We would like to know what you, as the people, the Congress, who are supposed to rein in this dictator, what are you going to do about it? These people have been sentenced to life imprisonment in a foreign country with no due process. Our government cannot do anything. Get me
for the kids.
Why won't you do your job, Senator?
Yeah.
Wow. Did y'all see that? That's red Iowa. Now, Republican pundits and strategists will say that those are Democratic plants. I don't think so. Those are Republicans talking to a Republican senator, and they're angry. I love seeing that. I love seeing that they're angry because that is the only way things are going to get done, guys, because you've got to do it. You've got to do the work for us. Yes, you do. So let's see. I am just very tired of people bashing Kamala. George Clooney did an interview with Jake Tapper, and he was Tapper, and he was saying how he wished they had primaried somebody else. So they're making it sound like that Kamala did an awesome job. She pulled that Democratic Party out of ruins. Rallies were crazy, spot on. People were coming in there. Everybody was excited. She did a phenomenal job. And I'm going to keep saying it. I'm going to keep saying it. And she won that election. Yeah. She did a phenomenal job. So, and they were like, we should have had a primary. Maybe, that's just not fair. And they kept saying things like, if you take Kamala, you're buying Joe and all kinds of stuff like that. But anyway, I just don't like how they talk about that. I just want them to leave Kamala alone. Leave her alone. Okay. So I always like to sometimes leave it with one of my girls, which is Jasmine Speaks. That's Jasmine Crockett. Yes, that's my congresswoman. Let's see what she's saying this week. Here we go, Jazz.
I just want to clarify that usually when we talk about racism in the Republican Party, it has to do with things like deleting the history of Jackie Robinson, deleting the history of Harriet Tubman, or deciding that the Tuskegee Airmen should be deleted, or maybe just defunding the African American Museum. The list kind of goes on and on and on, but I am not here to talk about why they are racist. I am here to talk about some other things as it relates to immigration. So let's get to that. It's interesting because we got all these theories. I don't know why we put up with getting data and facts if we just gonna sit here and talk about how we feel. So, maybe we can inject some facts into these feelings. I'm not really sure. But as somebody who has actually practiced criminal defense, I don't know if there's anybody else in here who has, I can tell you that I have handled thousands of cases, not hundreds of cases, thousands on the state level in Texas, Arkansas, and the federal level. And I can tell you that, if I had to look at the vast majority of the cases that I was representing criminal defendants on, the vast majority of them just didn't happen to be immigrants. These are just the facts of my experience, and maybe the immigrants went to somebody else. I don't know, but I can tell you in my actual experience in real life, in reality, and not in this fallacy world that y'all are making up where you hate on everybody. So my Republican colleagues are here using today to continue pushing this false narrative of sanctuary cities harboring criminals. Yet right here in DC, we have a 34-count felon being harbored in the White House. The hypocrisy coming from your side of the aisle over concerns regarding lawlessness is outrageous.
That's my girl, Jasmine Crockett, Congresswoman from Texas. So that's what's going on, everybody. That is what is going on in America. And it is scary right now. It is. It is very scary. It's so scary because the reason MAGA is so okay with short-term pain is because they want a leader so bad. Think about it. We had Martin Luther King. In the white population, because of where they position themselves, they haven't been able to rally around anyone. I just think I answered my own question. So this is the first time having someone to rally around, and it's Donald Trump. All right. So everybody, please I want you to stay engaged with this stuff, because something's going to happen and you're not going to be listening, and it's going to affect you. And I would be so sorry for that to happen. So you got to listen to what's going on, discuss it with people, understand people, and let's get this thing fixed. Because I believe we as a people can live together if we just get on it and do the work. We got to do the work. So thank you for joining me again for another episode of Let's Talk with Carl E. Long. And you guys, you have a wonderful day. Bye.